It's Monday, a little bit later than average. It's about 3:10 in the afternoon. Let's go ahead and check on my Twitter here, make sure this thing's streaming the way that it's supposed to be, or X. Sorry, I keep trying to call it Twitter, and then I call it X, and then, oh man, I don't know what I'm doing here. Let me see if my volumes are okay. There we go. Anyway, well, hi. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Drew Lentz, the Wireless Nerd. Today is Monday, October the 9th. And this is Waves, where I talk about what's new, what's next, what's now, what's going on in the wireless industry, what's going on with tech, what's happening back and forth, up and down. Lots of great stuff happened last week. So let's start with that. Let's start with what's new. Ekahau has introduced an AR model where you can take your phone and you can walk through your area, wherever you're trying to do a site survey, and you can generate the wall files and help, generate the floor plan. So you don't even need a floor plan anymore using the new AR enhancement that Ekahau is offering. I didn't see any information on when it's going to be available, but it is exciting. I've been a huge fan of AR and VR and the way that is going to be used in our industry. As you know, the first episode of this show, I think I talked all about what I thought the future of RF design and RF planning looked like. And so I'm really excited for that. It was great to see that Ekahau made that announcement. It had been hinted at, Matt and Mac always try and seed the room there. So there'd been some little screenshots posted before, and then even UC over at Homina jumped in and made a comment about it a couple days back, talking about the new AR kit and what's going on. So great to see that advancement coming with Ekahau. I'm excited to try it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully it helps a lot of people. We were doing this a couple years ago, about 2-3 years ago. I embarked on this journey to figure out how to create digital twins of restaurants and buildings, and then take that information, not just to generate floor plans, but then to use that to generate the imagery for signal propagation modeling in augmented and virtual reality. So I know, if you've ever followed me, you can see some of that stuff on the YouTube channel and on my blog and whatever. So I'm definitely interested in what's happening in that space. Glad to see a brand like Ekahau getting behind it. I know IB Wave has done some incredible stuff in that space as well. And I know Kelly was one of those, early advocates for things like this. I remember at WLPC where she did the walk and she was like putting equipment on chairs and drawing lines and stuff. So very cool to see it. Glad to see Ekahau jumping that game. I don't think Common is far behind on there. I know IB Wave's already there. I know EDX Technologies even has some stuff that they had done. So just really cool to see it. And then the consumerized or light commercialized version of it going into Ekahau, I think is going to be pretty neat. So that was announced last week at Wi-Fi Day. Wi-Fi Day had some really fun stuff where people talked about how they use the tools and what they do with it. A bunch of APs made surprise appearances. There were some. I guess it was Northern Arizona. Was that the university that did the showcase? So really cool to see that many people jumped in. Lots of popcorn in the comments. Lots of comments of people saying, man, I'm just here for the comments. So it was great to see all of us get together, a little bit of a precursor to what's coming up with WLPC coming in Prague, and then obviously what's coming in WLPC in February. And if you don't know what WLPC is and you're listening to this, go look at the Wireless LAN Professional Conference. If you care anything about wireless and Wi-Fi, that's the spot to be. It's always the spot to be. So that was neat to see that coming around. Whoa, I'm just moving stuff around, it looks like, over here. Trying to open up screens and not make my face look completely washed out at the same time. But I guess that's just part of it. So I thought that was pretty neat. Also, last week, Nokia introduced their network in a box for 5G. And I thought that was pretty interesting. It follows along the lines of what's happening with, Amazon. Amazon kicked that off, 2 years ago now, 3 years ago, about 5G as a service and private 5G as a service. And now we're seeing even the equipment manufacturers like Nokia getting involved in this. And it's still, man, it takes me back to the time when I was sitting in the press briefing, the media briefing, and Antonio from HP was saying, we're going to give everything as a service. And Kirti, who at the time was the chief over there at Aruba, I looked at him and was like, everything as a service? Like everything? And, here we are, but a handful of years later in 2023, and we've got groups like Nokia who are entering that. Again, private 5G as a service. So you don't have to pay any CapEx. It's all OpEx based on what you're using and how you're using it. And it's really neat. It's that upcoming trend of networking as a service, which I'll cover as the next part of this. But I think that's we're seeing this move to augmented reality, to virtual reality, to more networking as a service, to more cloud-based services, and that whole SaaS model really starting to take over a lot of the things that are happening. So it's very, very cool to see that. Now that I've shifted this little thing over, let me try and move my screen back to where it was supposed to be. I think it was there. Whatever. I just messed my graphics up as I was talking because I got so excited. Whatever. That's what makes it fun. Let's see. What else do we have? That's what's going on. I think that's what's new, that the Ekahau AR module, as well as the Nokia Network in a Box. And there was another one, I think it was BT or British Telecom. There was another group, or NTT. It was NTT that was introducing some new 5G as a service. So lots of really great stuff happening along those lines, helping people figure out the way that they want their network delivered to them. So I'm excited to see that. Excited to see that happening. Excited to see that moving on. What I'll do now is move on to what's happening now, because this one's interesting. This is about something called ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, launched here in the United States. And so ACP basically provides vouchers for people that qualify for it so that they can get connectivity at a decreased rate, or a $0 rate in a lot of locations, so that they can get online. So people who may have an internet service provider that serves their area, but they don't, financially, they're not able to absorb the cost of whatever that connectivity costs them. And so ACP is really looking good. Lots of people that are subscribing to it, lots of people that are using the vouchers. It's great to see that. That's money, I think, well spent. There's lots of people that can get online. 39% of ACP enrollees live in red states in the United States, which was interesting. The breakdown between red states and blue states, not political, just I thought that was an interesting stat to look at. Overall, about who's subscribing to these states. I wonder if it shows what the biggest one is. I think right now, lots of states here. We've got 29,141 ACP eligible Americans that are out there, and it gives them that voucher for $30 a month, and even in some cases it's going up. So it's really interesting to see the states that are taking advantage of this. I know down here in South Texas we've got a lot, which is really cool. And so one of the things about it, though, that has generated a little bit of heat, if you will, when it comes to the way that ACP is being used, is ACP can be applied to a mobile phone service, or it can be applied to a broadband service, but it has to be one or the other. It can't be both. And if you're in a household, you can only use that voucher for one thing at a time. Or actually, I think you only use it for one thing. You can either only use it for mobile service or for broadband service delivered via standard copper, fiber, wireless, whatever it is. And what we're seeing is that as ACP takes on more and more, there's these mobile providers that are prepaid mobile providers that are really jumping on board with this, and they're saying, hey, this is a great opportunity for mobile providers to step up and take advantage of that ACP voucher so that they can provide broadband via hotspot in the home, or they can bring it in via 5G and provide that in the home, which is interesting, because if you think about an interesting dynamic in South Texas, if you have a whole home that's filled with children, and mom or dad go use that voucher for their mobile service, and then they're off at work the whole time, then does the family actually get to take advantage of what it's supposed to be earmarked for? So it's really interesting. A little bit of controversy going on how that's playing out between the mobile providers that are absorbing those, and if that's actually usable, functional broadband for the students that are home, which is kind of one of the whole points of this. ACP had 20.7 million households enrolled as of September 4th, which is 13.6 million more than they had last year, September 5, 2022. I'm sorry, it was up. Yeah, it was 13.6 million. Now we're at 20.7 million. So 7 million subs up year over year. There's 124 million households in the U.S., so that's 70% of U.S. households. I'm reading this information from Felix Wireless. It's absolutely one of my favorite websites to go to grab information. I feel like I'm on it too much. But it's interesting because the ACP conversation is a great conversation to have, and it's all about how we're delivering broadband to people in the United States. And I think that's really what's happening now, is we're starting to see more and more communities that are coming on board that are supplying broadband for the people that live there, and for the students that live there. We've got such a cool program going on here in Far, Texas, which is my neighboring city. McAllen did this great initiative where we deployed Wi-Fi pretty much for the entire city, 22,000 households that were covered, 16,000 users that were on it. It was pretty awesome. And then FAR just went fiber to the home for everyone. So they did this huge build out to run fiber to the home for everyone that lives in the city of FAR. I got to stand on a panel with those cats last week with the Texas Workforce Commission and Workforce Solutions down here, and talk about how AI is going to affect the workforce development and the job marketplace, specifically in our area. And it was a crazy stat because it was something like 20.7% of our workforce will be affected by AI over the course of the next 7 years. It was 34,000 individuals, 34,000 jobs that they could put their thumb on that were going to be affected by AI. So if you don't have those statistics about your community, it's really interesting to see how AI is going to affect your workplace. It's kind of a side note, but one of the things with that is the jobs that are going to be needed in order to pursue jobs and get high-paying jobs in the future when AI is taking a lot of the mundane tasks out of the way. That connectivity component is super important. So that's how ACP plays into it for us, right? It's down in South Texas, there's affordability is very, very hard to come by when it comes to internet service providers. And if we're moving into this area where workforce is going to be, where you have to have good connectivity in order to be a part of the workforce, then ACP is going to be vital for some of that comes along. So that's what's happening now in my neck of the woods. As y'all know, that's one of my heartstrings. So start talking about affordable connectivity and broadband in areas, and I can just talk for days about it. But I don't want to talk for days because one of the things that I've gotten feedback on with this podcast and this little show has been that it's short, it's sweet, to the point. So that being said, I'm going to move on to what's next. So I talked about what's going on now, which is that affordable connectivity. I talked about what's new, Ekahau's AR and the Nokia network in a box. That's pretty cool. So I want to talk about what's next because I've seen a couple of things that have been posted online about Wi-Fi 8, and if you haven't fallen off that cliff and started to read about Wi-Fi 8 yet, it's pretty fun to look at. Wi-Fi 7 is, a lot of people are working on that already. There's vendors that have put out pre-standardized chipsets that are available. There's people that put out devices. You know how it is. You know how this industry is. Someone mentions a new acronym and all of a sudden there's a new device for it. It's a weird device, but sometimes it'll work. But Wi-Fi 8, the things that I'm looking at for Wi-Fi 8, just 3 key points here, low latency being one of them. It's not so much about network efficiency from that component as it is from the ability, well, I guess it is network efficiency, being able to get data on and off faster. But the two big things that they're really working around are UHR, which is ultra high reliability. That's multiple access point coordination and transmission. So instead of MLO like we're going to have in Wi-Fi 7, which is just getting 2 links together, 2 5 gig radios, 5 and a 2, whatever it is, doing that link optimization and link coordination. Now we're actually talking about access points that can work together to help serve clients. So multiple access point coordination and transmission. Be on the lookout. The acronym is UHR, ultra high reliability. That's the thing that's going to make a big difference here in Wi-Fi 8 as it comes down, in 5, 6, 10, 8, 3, I don't know, however many years. When it comes, that's what's going to be there. And also millimeter wave frequencies. So when you start to talk about MLO in 2 gig, 5 gig, and 6 gig, as we're going to see in Wi-Fi 7, now start to add 45 gig and 60 gig to that. So that the whole Y gig thing, if you remember that, looking at how that's going to affect Wi-Fi, and respectively of 45 gigahertz, we've got 5.5 gig of open spectrum, and in 60 gigahertz, there'll be 14 gigahertz of open spectrum. So when you start to think about those 320 megahertz channels and the way that's gonna scale up over time, it's gonna be pretty neat. We've got a lot of spectrum that's going to be used, and a lot of fast spectrum that's going to be used, and then coordinated, obviously, as MLO turns into UHR. So I think that's pretty cool. Wi-Fi, it's going to be really neat to watch. And RF as a service, I've got a note here. It says RF as a service. I want to look down the ways a little bit and start to see that, this year, with Ekahau talking about the AR stuff, and there's a company called Kinetics that's out there that's doing some of that digital twin modeling to do RF floor plans and blueprints for RF. I think that's really neat. And I'm starting to really look at what's that going to mean for all of us in the future? What's that going to mean for us as RF designers, as people who work in RF, as administrators, as planners of our networks, things like that? And I really start, that's where my mind's going. it's not just going to be the design services and, and the troubleshooting services. It's going to be the actual feet on the street. And I love to think about, I started talking about this last year at Fuse 23, which is happening right now in Madrid. Sad that I'm not there. I was there as part of the Open Wi-Fi team last year. And, knowing that they're leading the charge in disaggregated networks and things, I'm sure there's a lot of buzz going on at Fuse. Not a lot has made it online. So they just step their social media game up and spread the word about what's happening over there at the event this year. But talking about how being able to go out and troubleshoot a network by putting on a headset, not needing the spectrum analyzer, not needing the tools and all that stuff to go out and really provide services just by looking at things and reporting that back and using cameras and sensors and all the other data to push it back to help run RF as a service. So we'll elaborate more on that later. But then I think the last thing that I really want to think about in the future is really my head's stuck around network as a service. And, with Nokia making their introduction, Nokia's not a small company when it comes to cell deployment. So I'm looking for Ericsson, I'm looking for Alcatel-Lucent, I'm looking for these other groups to come in and say, hey, this is what we're going to start offering now, because some of the service providers are offering it. So let's see where those equipment manufacturers step up and see what they're going to do. Anyway, that's my 15. That's it for this week. Those are the things that are on the top of my mind. What's on the top of your mind? Send a message. Getting great feedback on LinkedIn, so I totally appreciate it. I still need to get to 1,000 subs so that my wife will take me to Mexico. So please, if you get a chance, tell everyone to subscribe to my channel so I can go to Mexico with my wife. I would very much appreciate it. Otherwise, post some comments online. Let me know what's top of mind for you. And if you want to jump online, maybe we'll get some guests on here pretty soon. And as I mentioned before, I'm lining up sponsorships right now, which is really good. And I do appreciate the support. A couple people have come out and showed some really good early support. So expect some sponsored messages coming soon. There'll be like a little 30-second thing at the beginning, and then there'll be like a minute or two in the middle. But I've got some new equipment on the way that I'm going to be showing off for the first sponsor of Mini, and that will be NetAlly. So take a look at some of the tools I'm going to have available. Anyway, have yourself a wonderful week. I will touch base with you all next week. In the meantime, enjoy your Wi-Fi. Have a wonderful week. Talk to you soon.